Hey everyone, welcome back to TK's Tech Talk. As some of you know by now, I'm TK and I'd like you to welcome back my accomplice, TTKK, or better known as the Trusty Kitchen Knife. And today we'll be unboxing another PC case. You may have seen from my last couple of videos, I've unboxed the Thermaltake Core V1 and the Silverstone SG13, which was in pink. And this is the micro ATX equivalent of the Thermaltake Core V1. So let me just cut open the box, and while I'm doing that, I want to let you know I've got this from Amazon in the UAE for about 85 dirhams, which is about 17 pounds I think in UK money, and that equates to maybe about $21 or $22 in US money. So it's a bit big to unbox this on the camera, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to cut this open and then I'll remove the case from the box and let you know if there was anything additional inside. So let me just take out the box and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've taken the case out of the box, and one thing I noticed when I removed the case from the box, there's nothing inside the box by the way, just the case. I'm guessing all the accessories are inside. At least that's what it looks like from the plastic side panel, which we'll see in a moment. So first thing I want to point out is this logo at the front. It just comes off because it's a magnet, it has a magnet. I'm guessing this is to remove maybe that internal fan that comes pre-installed inside, but we'll come to that in a moment. So if you don't want this logo and if you just want to have a plain black looking case, you can just remove it, or you can of course put it back on to hide the screw cover. The other thing I want to mention before we look around the case is the top here has a magnetic mesh filter. So that's quite handy to clean the dust off much easier. So let's have a look at the first side, or the left side of the case. And on this side we have a power button, a reset button. We have two USB 3.0 I believe. I don't think they're 3.1 Gen 1 or Gen 2 or anything like that, but let's just say 5 gigabits USB 3 ports. We have a microphone port and a headphone or headset jack. And here we can see that there is some stuff inside. We'll open it up in a moment. Let's just go around the case first quickly. So going to the back, so obviously you can see that because it's square, it is definitely wider than a normal ATX case or a tower case. But of course the benefit is that you get a lot of airflow inside, and you have the power supply at the bottom, as you can see here, and the motherboard is resting on top of it. So you don't need to worry about, you know, in some cases you have the power supply at the top, or if you have a full ATX power supply inside a small case, it's not going to impact the heat, or it's not going to get in the way of the components in any way. And it's sort of saving space compared to an upright case, because it gives you a shorter case in height, but then of course you've got a much wider case to put down somewhere. So you know, you have to think about how much space you have on your worktop or on the floor to position that. So overall, okay, so the one good thing is that the edges definitely don't feel sharp, and that really is annoying sometimes for me. You've got a nice rubber grommet here, I guess for some cabling that may pass through or something like that. A nice big fan slot here. I think that's a 120mm fan can go there. And everything is secured, at least all the covers are secured by thumb screws. Now, just want to mention that all of this, the sides and the tops are actually interchangeable. And I've just noticed there's actually another magnetic cover on the side. So these two, the top and the left at the moment, as we're looking at the case, are both the same. And then obviously we have the acrylic window. So if you want to have a look at your components from the top, then you can put that on the top. And especially if you have a water-cooled setup, that would definitely be beneficial to have a nice looking case. It is acrylic, it's not glass. That's for another time, an argument for another time, but let's not worry about that for now. So let's have a quick look on this side, and as on the top, we don't really have anything exciting going on the side. So why don't we open this up quickly and see what's inside. Thankfully, they're just thumb screws, come off easily. And maybe what I'll do is try and get my other Core V1 case. It's just sitting empty anyway. It's white in color, just so you can get an idea of size difference. For me, what's frustrating about ITX motherboards is, you know, there's limited choices. With MATX, you have obviously a little bit more choice, and obviously if you buy a full ATX case, you have the most choice. Okay, let's leave the bottom one on for now. Don't think there's anything exciting going on at the bottom. Nope, doesn't look like it. Let's leave that one on for now, so we don't need to worry about it. So let's take all the covers off. So we've got the side panel, there's the acrylic one. And then the top one, which obviously has a magnetic mesh, so you can see that clearly there. And the other side panel, as I mentioned, inside and outside is same as the top one. So you can put these in any orientation you like. Now what's interesting about this case is because it's a cube, it's actually designed to stack another one on top in case you wanted to have two cases on top of another, or two PCs or something in the same room. So when you add one on top, it makes it at least the height a little bit more manageable if you wanted to have two machines closer together. So at the top here, you can see we have the railings here. It's actually got it marked out. So let me try and show those markings to you. You can actually see that it's marked out for the different sizes of radiators, because you can actually, obviously this is made to fit radiators for better cooling. And let's have a look around now inside. So we have a bag here. Oh. I'm sure that must have come from inside. Oh, actually no, it's the extra one I removed from the bottom. I'll put that back on in a moment. So what do we have inside? We have, I guess these are some brackets and screws, so let's just get rid of that for a moment. And that would open up the cable. So we have some header cables. We have USB 3 header cable for the USB 3 ports. We have audio cable, power switch, etc., etc., etc. And to be honest, this case actually, I'm going to be honest, it feels a lot nicer made so far than the Core V1. It feels a bit slightly better quality overall. I'm not sure how that compares, but for now, we'll have a look at that in a moment, but for now, it does feel a lot better. So on this side, there's nothing really going on. You can see the motherboard risers are already part of the case, so these are highlighted for micro ATX. And the ones that, so it's actually got an M next to all the ones that are labeled for micro ATX, and then there's also an I next to the 4 that are used for the ITX motherboards. So nice and easy to understand exactly what's going on there. So now at the bottom here, I believe there are 1, 2, 3 3.5 bays for hard drives. Right, and that's actually quite cool the way it just fits right next to the power supply and saves you a lot of space inside the case. So it does show how it is in some ways, depending on your use, it can be a very practical layout. Because what's also interesting is on the other side, if we turn it around again, we now have 3 more bays. So these are 3 bays, they're held in with thumb screws, nice and easy to remove. And these are used to clip in 3 more 2.5-inch drives. So that's like 6 drives in total. That's really cool, to be honest, because considering, again, how relatively compact this case is, it does have a lot of bays for hard drives and storage and things like that. So you can have 3 SSDs and 3 spinning disks, and maybe have some sort of RAID configuration for your your backup storage or secondary storage on your spinning disks, and still have all of the SSDs also in RAID if you really want. Of course, your motherboard needs to be able to handle 6 drives, and mostly you only get 4 SATA ports. So something to think about, make sure or you can always buy a SATA riser card. So that's another thing that you can do there. So I think that's just to have a quick look around the case. I'm not going to go into too much details about how you install stuff. Oh, one more thing that I wanted to mention, and I forgot, was that if you have a look right here, this is actually a 200mm fan, which already comes pre-installed, and that can obviously be replaced to something of your choosing or liking, depending on how you plan to cool the case. So if you have any questions about this case in particular, please feel free to ask, and I'll try to answer, because obviously it's the first time I've opened the case as well. But so far I do like the fact that the edges around it, the quality is fairly decent. It's got a nice matte feeling finish to the case. The black actually looks quite nice as well overall. So for me it looks good. But let me now quickly go and grab the Core V1, and we just use it for a size comparison. I'm not going to compare the features too much. I want to just show you the difference in size between the Core V21 and the Core V1. So just give me a moment and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got the Core V1 and the Core V21 side by side now, and you can see that there is definitely a difference in height and width. They're more or less the same shape, obviously. They've got the similar windows on the sides and the tops and things like that. So one of the things you do want to consider when deciding which one you want to build in, or what sort of size computer you want to have, like, do you have space for the bigger one? Because bigger is always better for cooling and obviously more compatibility with different types of motherboards. So for example, if you buy the Core V1, you can only put a ITX motherboard inside. If you buy the Core V21, you can use your ITX or your micro ATX motherboard, and that really does depend on how much space you have or how big a PC you want to make. And obviously you can get a full ATX case as well. Again, you will have access to all of the motherboards, and then an eATX case, which is I think the biggest size you can get at the moment, and that will allow for all of your motherboards down from eATX all the way down to ITX. So the main consideration factor for me here, to be honest, would just be size. So if you have a small space, go for the ITX. However, the one thing that I personally believe, and not everyone may agree, is that oh, that one doesn't have a magnetic front, just notice that. So I mean, not everyone will agree with this point, but for me, if you're able to buy the slightly bigger case, I would say it's the better option, because it gives you more expandability for storage and things like that. But if none of that is of a concern to you, you can always go for the ITX case. But overall, what will happen is that if you're using it for heavy use, this will definitely be harder to cool. I'm not saying it's hard to cool, it will be harder to cool than the bigger case. There's much more space for airflow. You've got space for the bigger radiators, which you don't have in the small case, though you can probably add a small radiator at the front and things like that. But bottom line is, if you're going to be doing some hardcore gaming and things like that, I still do think that the micro ATX case is better in that regard, to try and keep the PC cooler with minimal effort. Another nice thing about this case is that it has the removable mesh filters, which this case does not have. So let me try and quickly show you the difference between the two by showing you the side. So here you can see that it's just a side grill. It doesn't have the mesh filter and things like that. And that's why I was saying these little touches make the case feel like it's made a bit better. The magnetic filter at the top, the magnetic badge at the front, though it's probably useless, but the bottom line is that you can see they paid a bit more attention to detail in creating the bigger case. Another thing you notice, I'm not sure if you can see it in the camera, is that this plastic is a little bit of color. Now that could happen with black as well, but it's definitely more prominent in the white, and the paint job between the plastic and the white is very different. And it might have happened just because the case has been sitting there for a while. I don't know how these things change over time. Could be due to heat, could be anything. But bottom line is there is some color difference if you go for the white version. Something to think about if you're also thinking about the white version for the Core V21. And let's just quickly, so on the side again, even this case, the inputs are more or less the same. We have the same power buttons, same USB ports, and the headphone jack, and etc. So moving quickly to the back of the case, and here again you will see some key differences, because obviously with the ITX case you will have a limitation as to the number of expansion slots that you can have, naturally, because of the size of the motherboard. So the maximum you will ever get from an ITX is 2, and the maximum you will ever get from a micro, I believe it's 4, because that position is dependent on the GPU, but there are 5 slots nevertheless, in case you wanted to add a header for antennas or something like that, which is not part of the motherboard as well. So you can add that expansion plate, especially if your graphics card is using 2, you'll have 3 other expansion slots if your motherboard supports that. The good thing is though, even the ITX case does support a full ATX power supply. So both of them have a full ATX power supply support. We have 2 small 80mm fan slots on the ITX case, and we have a 120mm fan slot on the Core V21 MATX case. So that is it for the key differences. There is also some differences around the number of drives that you can house in the smaller case. I believe it was 2 2.5-inch drives and 2 3.5-inch drives, and in the bigger case we have 3 3.5-inch drives plus 3 2.5-inch SATA SSDs. So please feel free to ask any questions. If you have any questions about either of these cases, I'm more than happy to try and answer them. I haven't been able to build a machine in the ITX case yet. I don't have an ITX motherboard. I have been looking out to try and build another PC just for the sake of using the case, because I don't really have any use for another PC, to be honest. I am, however, tempted to move the PC I have right now. You may have seen a video on that earlier about the other NR400 Cooler Master case that I have. I'm tempted to put those components into here and see which one I prefer to use. Right now I don't have any hard drives, so both cases are fine. And the only thing I found about ITX cases, and I think I forgot to mention this point earlier, was that I do feel that there is less choice and it's a more expensive choice to go for an ITX board. Now you will see there's a lot of enthusiast boards, especially in the ITX range, like for example the Z590i. They're about $400, $500. I know you can get much more expensive boards as well, but around $400 to $500 you're looking at a board with Thunderbolt 4 and things like that on board for the 11th gen CPUs, for example. And of course you have the X570i, which is the equivalent for AMD, and if you go for the ASRock version, you'll also be able to get a Thunderbolt port as well. So there's lots of things to think about, but definitely the ITX boards I found, there's less choice, and they cost a bit more than the M-ATX. I could be wrong, but this is what I've generally observed. And at least with the M-ATX case, you'd have option to use the ITX board if you find one that you like, also inside your M-ATX case, with the possibility of, without changing your case in the future, and upgrading to a bigger, more functional, more usable motherboard if your needs require. Anyway, thanks for watching. Again, feel free to ask any questions. Please do feel free to like and subscribe. It really does help me, encourage me to continue making videos like this for everyone out there, and especially if it is something that helps people. Thanks again. See you in the next one.